What are odds? This is a follow-up to discussing probability. So odds is one of those topics that's not difficult, but it's really easy to mess up or make mistakes. Why? Well, it's largely because while probability uses some type of total, odds doesn't. So what I want us to do is to understand and calculate odds in favor and odds against. So what are odds? Unlike probability, which calculates the chance that an event will happen, odds compares the number of ways an event can happen to the number of ways it cannot happen. In probability, we're used to saying out of, as in 1 out of 6, where 6 is the total. That can make it easy to make a mistake when calculating odds. With odds, we want to get used to saying 2, as in 1 to 5, or 1:5, which is read 1 to 5. Notice that with odds, the total can be seen by adding the two numbers, 1 plus 5, to get 6 in our example. So let's talk odds in favor. To calculate odds in favor, create a ratio. Your ratio is the number of ways the event can happen to the number of ways the event cannot happen. I like to think of it as successes to failures. If you remember probability, probability is successes to total outcomes. So that's how probability and odds differ. So odds in favor is successes to failures. So here's an example. Find the odds in favor of rolling a 5 or 6 on a single 6-sided die. So here's our solution. The number of ways this can happen is 2 ways. That's the number of successes. You can either roll a 5 or a 6. The number of ways it cannot happen is 4 ways, because you could roll a 1, 2, 3, or 4 that are all not a 5 or a 6. So the odds in favor are 2 to 4, or once you simplify it, 1 to 2. Notice that the probability of rolling a 5 or a 6 is success to total, which would be 2 to 6, or once simplified, 1/3. What about odds against something happening? So to calculate odds against, we still create a ratio. This time, we do the number of ways the event cannot happen to the number of ways the event can happen. Notice this time it's failures to successes. Notice that odds against is simply the reverse of odds in favor. So here's another example. Find the odds against rolling a 5 or 6 on a single 6-sided die. So the number of ways this cannot happen, there's 4 of them, a 1, 2, 3, or 4. Those would be our failures. The number of ways it can happen is 2, rolling a 5 or a 6. So the odds against are 4 to 2, or when simplified, 2 to 1. Notice that the probability of rolling a 5 or 6 is success to total, 2 to 6, which is simplified to 1 to 3. Be sure that you know odds can be written several different ways. It's often written using a colon, but it could be written as a fraction. That's why labeling is very important. Here's just a summary of what we just talked about. Calculating odds. Odds in favor is successes to failures. Odds against is failures to successes. So here's some example. The odds of a month being August are 1 to 11. And if it just says the odds of a month, it doesn't say odds in favor. Odds in favor is implied. Okay. So August versus all the other months. There's 1 August, there's 11 not Augusts. The odds of a month not being August would be the reverse of that, 11 to 1. Because that's odds against. Notice it didn't say odds against, but you just had to get that from the context clues. The odds of a coin landing on heads is 1 to 1, because there's 1 heads and there's 1 not heads. That's odds in favor. The odds of a coin not landing on heads is still 1 to 1. Notice that difference. Probability would be 1/2 that you get heads, But odds, either in favor or against, is 1 to 1. That's important. I hope that helped you see how to calculate odds in favor and odds against. Thanks for watching.